tragic story, as often as the Times. I mean, it's a very, very tragic story. You may have seen this. It was a headline out of Grayling where there's a fatal shooting of a William Reddy, 32-year-old, by the Crawford County Sheriff's Department deputy during an emergency removal of his 2-year-old son from an apartment that he and his son shared. And many of his friends were crying foul. It's an interesting, terrible tragedy. And what's interesting to me is that in the article they refused to let anyone post any comments because it was such a sensitive topic. The article goes on to read that the Michigan State Police probe has concluded that the shooting was justified because Reddy had a pocket knife and allegedly lunged at the police. So say the state police. Questions that were asked by family members were, why didn't the police just arrest him or cite him for marijuana instead of removing his child? What the story reports is that workers from the Department of Community Health Services were out investigating, as a standard protocol, the relationship of his son and him because there was a custody battle going on through the courts. And as a matter of course, the protective services or human resources would come out and investigate and determine what the status was and then make a recommendation to the court as far as how they would proceed with this child custody arrangement that's going on. And this is a standard procedure that happens. When the workers from the department got out there, they said that they smelled marijuana and were concerned that Freddie was actually smoking marijuana in front of his children. They went on to call the police, where the police returned. Multiple officers entered the apartment and attempted to remove the minor child from Reddy's custody because the conditions of the surrounding the children was purportedly contrary to the welfare of the child to remain in the home because it was illegal that the father use marijuana in the home in the presence of the child. In addition, so says the department, there was a concern for the safety of the child because of the marijuana. Now, the police came into the house and they went at Freddie, and in front of the child, as they alleged that he pulled out a pocket knife, where 3 or 4 officers were, they shot him. Reports are different, 1 time or 2 time. One of the neighbors said they heard 2 shots. But the neighbor also witnessed, as he came to the door, the child run out of the room, and Freddie laying face down on the ground, dead. So this is outrageous, and you can't even begin to digest and unravel the horrific effect that this is going to have on so many lives, and why. Let's try a little bit here. First of all, the initial assertion by the Human Resource Department was that there was marijuana being smoked in front of the child. We know that the biggest opponent of medical cannabis for several years in its application as a medicine, because of the fear of the smoking effects on the lungs, has recanted its position and determined that smoking of cannabis has no ill effects on the lungs. And the assertion here that the smoking in front of the child is somehow going to impact the child when cigarette smoking, for example, goes on in front of children, secondhand smoke does have an impact, and that's not an issue. Or that someone could drink in front of a child. And the idea that there may be, and I'm not recommending this, and this is not something that is to be thought of, but the idea that the level that this raised to, that required the police to come in and try to physically remove the child, tells us how far off base we are with reality. There's no violence that's going to take place. There's no allegations of assaultive behavior that are taking place with the child. The mere reason they wanted to pull the child was because it purportedly smelled like marijuana, and there was a concern that it may have been smoked in front of the child. Let's talk about the human lives that are going to be destroyed by this. I think first of the police officer who pulled the trigger and his family, and what they're going to go through in dealing with a human being that killed another human being in front of that human being's child, and probably looked and saw the eyes on that 2-year-old, and what he's going to see when he looks at his children, and how awful it's going to be for him, and how he must feel, and that he swore into a brotherhood to protect and serve, and ends up killing someone. He's got to deal with that. That's a tragedy. How about his wife? What is she going to live through now? dealing with a police officer and all of that. He's been cleared. The department's cleared, and it's go ahead, keep doing it. Nothing's going to stop. Nothing's going to change. The next guy that is in that situation is not going to think twice to pull out his revolver and shoot once or twice. How about the wife that was involved in the custody dispute now? How does she feel? She's in a dispute over for some. Doesn't everything else seem so insignificant now that the husband, father of her child is now dead? How about the kid who witnessed it? Can anyone say that the results of that child remaining in the home with the tragedy of cannabis smoke being in the air in the worst case scenario is worse than this result? I want to say that this is unacceptable. That what we have here is a assertion of some terrible concept of cannabis as a general rule that would justify this behavior, that would result in a police department that's sworn to uphold the truth as clearing an individual for that behavior. Under any circumstances, this is not a civilized society. This is justifiable killing. This is a slaughter. This isn't even a war on drugs. This is a slaughter. There's no chance in a fight like this. This is not a fair fight. This is a blitzkrieg on fundamental freedoms. And now, the life of a husband, a son, a father, a fellow citizen, taken in the stupid reasons. There's nothing that can be said is how tragic this is. And if you ever needed a reason, if you ever needed a reason to care, if you ever needed a reason to say, unless you care, nothing is ever going to change, let this be the motivation to keep us fighting in this battle of our freedom, of democracy, of the importance of cannabis as a medicine, and let his death not be in vain. We're going to be right back.